Go live. There you are. Wherever you are, there you are.
Hi, everybody.
Hello,
Welcome,
hello.
welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
How you guys doing?
Hello, Miss Angie and Robin and Robbie, Marie.
Good to
So,
see
Good
you.
to see everybody on board here.
Hopefully, a
Thanks
couple
for joining
more.
us.
7 additional guests now. It said.
Dark Ojai, yeah,
Is it dark? I know it gets dark so
getting
early.
dark
It's
early.
like 4:15, and all of our patients. It's funny because the clients are like, I normally feed my dog at 5 something, but then as soon as it gets dark at 4:30, their dog starts screaming at them. It's
Please
time to
feed
feed me.
me.
It's time to feed me.
It's dark out, feed
And
me.
they're like, it's not time, but it's time because the darkness cues them in.
Right.
So pretty interesting. Dogs do tell time,
Sort of.
kind of.
They just don't make adjustments for time changes.
Well,
Right.
it's still the same time. We just changed our clocks, but
True that.
it's actually still the other time. So anyway,
Anyway, here
I'm
we are.
going to put it to the split screen because we have a couple announcement slides. We're going to
Sure
cover.
do. Yeah.
We are going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 12, part C.
Right. Picking
Part
up, I think
C.
in verse 13, I think is where we'll start tonight. But
We ended around there,
a couple
13,
of things
14.
to get to. First of all, we've been saying this for a couple of weeks, but we'll say it again.
Because it's this Saturday. It's 2 days away.
Right.
The next Christian Open Mic Night in
We've
Long
been
Beach.
Partnering with Cozy Crepes Cafe in Long Beach, near Long Beach City College, near the intersection of Carson Street and Bellflower Street. And we have an open mic night. Hello, Miss Carolyn. Thanks for joining us. We have another one of our Christian open mic nights,
Yep.
and they've been a lot of fun. They've been a heck of a lot of fun, and an interesting variety of spoken word, presentation of artwork, songs, original compositions,
Right.
just a whole variety of things. And
kind of comedy, because
yeah,
the one
somebody
lady did a little comedy
yeah,
skit,
so
you know.
hello, Lori.
So-
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It
yeah.
really is just what God is putting on people's hearts, you know. So we're
Right.
excited that this gets to be our third official one because we had
Yeah.
September, October, and November. And then December, I think it's the 6th. Oh, let me get the date right because I'll say it wrong. Because it's second Saturday, so it's the 13th. December 13th, we're actually going to go old-fashioned Christmas caroling. So
in the community.
it,
yeah.
right, because this coffee shop, Crepes Cafe, Cozy Crepes Cafe, it's right in a little Lakewood Village sort of area. But then just around the corner from there's a laundromat next door, and then right around the corner from it is a neighborhood, you know,
Yeah.
of houses. So I've been praying about like, well, let's do some old-fashioned caroling, and so we're gonna either go in one big group or split up. I'm not sure. It depends on how many people come. And then we'll walk through the neighborhood. I'll have some song sheets, and then somebody like Danny Cortez or someone might have a guitar that he could play as we walk along. But otherwise, we'll sing a cappella, and we'll sing some carols at different households and doors. And if there's like nobody home or the community's not open or something, we'll go the other way and go by the other businesses and Christmas carols, sing along there. And then we'll go back to the cafe and we'll have hot chocolate and maybe hot cider and some treats. So it's going to be fun. We're going to do an old-fashioned Christmas carol, walk around and carol in the community. So that's on December 13th.
Right.
So
Seems
pray,
crazy that
yeah,
we're
pray for
talking
that.
about
Yeah, it's December already. Pray for that, too. And if you can come out and support in person, we'd love that. If not, at least we would totally appreciate all the prayer support as well, because you know what the enemy likes to do
Right.
when we're out and about and reaching out beyond the four walls of the church into the community, right? So
Right.
yeah.
And as always, we just remind everybody that Cozy Crepes Cafe has excellent food for sale on these mic nights.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, they have their full menu the last time, which
yeah.
is crepes and paninis and lovely items like that. I'm going to make it bigger for a second so you guys can see the handout. It's 4203 Monterey Avenue, Montar Avenue in Long Beach,
Right.
90808. That's the location. So this Saturday we'll be there we'll get there around 4 for setting up, but then the doors open at 5 for serving food. The sharing time starts between around 6, and then on December 13th, we'll be meeting there again around 5. We'll probably go caroling from like 6 to 7 or 7:30.
Not this Sunday.
No,
Saturday.
I said on December 13th, we will do the caroling event, but we're going to meet there first, and then we'll go out caroling as a group, and then we'll come back and have treats. So I imagine the caroling part will be from 6 to 6:30 or something like that, because it's going to be dark at 4:30. So so I'm not worried about. We'll have some lanterns, or we'll bring some battery powered lanterns. Maybe we'll have some candles. I'm not really sure about that.
Yeah, Lori says she's very familiar with.
She used to live there. She said
she's asked for a prayer for her husband, Pastor Daniel, who's
diverticulitis.
I would not wish that on anybody.
So painful.
Yes, Pastor Dan, we lift you up and ask the Lord's healing hand to be upon you, and to take care of this very painful condition. So in Jesus' name. So,
well, and talk about praying for people. Oh, okay. Michael and Morgan, our adopted son, and his recent bride had their baby, Michael Jr. No, the third. He's the third. Michael Wayne Miller, the third. Yeah. And so he was born just November 2nd. And then I saw that Brenna Hanlon, our client that we've known since she was in junior high, had her baby. His name is Owen. She just had her baby the other day. Right. And Paul and Nicolette Rhodes. Anyway, they had their baby. Wow. Too. And all boys.
October.
And so there's one left. I have one couple left that hasn't had their baby yet that I'm aware of. Gabby and Justin Cruz are. So thanking God for all the, as far as I know, healthy babies that have been born within a week of each other. All these ladies, we knew 4 couples, all pregnant at the same time. All different ages, actually, of people, and different parts of the country, some of them. But, well, they all live here now.
I guess so.
Yeah, Nicolette and Paul live here now. But anyway, they all live here now, but it's just very interesting to me that every pregnant woman I knew was having a boy.
Oh, and Miss Angie says her first grandbaby was,
October 8th. Oh, my goodness, that's right.
That's right.
October 8th.
So,
yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah, that's Chris Holtzberry, who was on the volleyball team with us. Angie, that's her birthday, October 8th. So your grandbaby and Chris share a birthday. Yeah, Lori says she lived down there. Yeah. Manny is here too. Yay. Hey, Manny.
Thanks for joining us. So one more announcement before we dive into our study.
Go ahead.
This Sunday, if you are in the Long Beach area,
no, it's not this Sunday.
The 16th.
It's 16th.
Yeah,
so it's 16th. The third Sunday, right? So
third Sunday.
So in a week from Sunday. So it's cool because that way you guys could plan and come join us. I'll make it larger right now. Yeah. We meet after church, after our morning service at 9:30 a.m. at Cal Heights Baptist Church, where we meet as the Light Christian Fellowship. I'll be preaching this week on Joshua chapter 8. And we meet on the third Sunday at just a couple of miles down the road at Sorrento's Italian Kitchen. They have some of the best Italian food, really, I've ever had. I haven't had anything bad there. They have awesome salads and calzones that are like the size of a large football, overgrown football. Anyway, and wonderful pasta and lasagna is amazing. So anyway, if you guys are ever available, even if you can't join us for a service, you're welcome to just come and join us for lunch. So we got to see Manny and Marie last time, and so different people pop in sometimes at the luncheon time, which is nice because you can go to your regular service and then come and join us. So that's not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, November 16th. So we'd love to have you guys there. Let me put it back on. I gotta find my arrow. There it is. Put us back on the split screen so you can see that. So that address is 4102 Orange Avenue, Suite 123 in Long Beach. There you go.
There you go. And
okay.
Then, I don't have a slide for it, but this Sunday, here where we're sitting at 146 Church.
Oh yeah.
At I'm gonna forget the address. 48.
It's 54. Here, I'll tell you.
So
anyway, it's 5948 Westminster.
5948. I always get backwards.
5948 Westminster Boulevard.
Westminster Boulevard. Here we are having a celebration. As you may be aware, There's a very faithful core team that prays 5 days a week, every weekday at 6 a.m. specifically for cancer patients. And they have some amazing testimonies and stories. And this Sunday is a thank you. It's a thank you not just to the prayer warriors, but to the Lord for His healing hand upon many, many, many people that have been stricken with cancer in this fallen world that we live in. So, yeah, so lots and lots and lots of things going on, and we just want to invite everybody, make everybody aware of all of these things. So, yeah, this Sunday here at 146 Church at 5 p.m. So you don't have to miss morning church. You can still show up here and celebrate with the church family here. I can hardly hear Dan. Oh, okay. Let me see what I can do, Robin. So thanks for the update.
Are you turned on?
I am on.
Yeah, it says on.
It says on.
And it says, check, check, check.
It says I'm loud. Let's check. Oh yeah, it says I'm loud. So, but I will move my mic a tad higher. Maybe that's a little bit better. So
now it just flopped over away from your, because the weight is on the collar. Put it on the inside of this one.
Oh boy. Technical difficulties. That helped. Okay, we'll try that. So
okay.
Let me know, give me a thumbs up or something like that if that made it better. So.
Well, because you had it on your collar, and then your collar flopped away from you.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And it's still kind of flopping away from you. That's why I said I would put it on the other collar.
All right, I can try that. Made it better. Okay, hopefully that's better.
Oh no, just the windscreen thing fell off, but that's okay. You don't really need it, I think.
Okay, I'll take off the windscreen and I'll try not to make popping noises with sounds. Okay, so
screen
here we go.
stuck.
Okay, it's time to dive into our study. We are picking up on chapter 12 of the book of Deuteronomy, and we're going to start with verse 13. Recapping very, very briefly, the Lord has instructed the people of Israel as they enter into the promised land to be sure to utterly and completely destroy the cultic, pagan places of worship, which we know were quite detestable places or detestable practices happened in these hilltops, tree groves, structures, odd places throughout the promised land. And the Lord is giving very, very careful instructions to the Israelites. And that's what we're going to read about today. So if you want to pick up the narrative in verse 13.
Okay.
So
let me move this. Okay, I see. I was wondering why we're not showing up there. Okay. Now, verse 13 of chapter 12 of Deuteronomy. Be careful that you do not offer your burnt offerings in any cultic place that you see, but only in the place which the Lord chooses in one of your tribes. There you shall offer your burnt offerings, and there you shall do everything that I command you.
Yes, and we'll see in subsequent chapters that one of the places, or the primary place that the Lord chooses, is called Shiloh. Shiloh, and that becomes a focal point for some of the subsequent books and narrative. So the Lord is saying, hey, y'all can't just pick places that you want because they have some kind of mystical meaning to you or some kind of spiritual significance to you. I'm the Lord. I'm going to tell you where to pick the places, and it's not because God is like a control freak. It's because God knows best, first of all, but He does not want the people to say, oh, we'll just move in and we'll just take over this beautiful grove where detestable practices happened. Like, no. The focus is to be on worshiping the Lord, not, usurping places where evil occurred. That's not the intent. So, hey, Rich, good to see you.
Hey,
Glad
Rich.
you joined us. So here we go, verse 15.
However, you may slaughter and eat meat within any of your gates, whatever you desire, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. The unclean and the clean alike may eat it, as gazelle and the deer.
Okay. Now, to our modern sensibilities, this is like, whoa, what just happened? We're like, don't worship here. Oh, but you can eat anything you want. Wait. Our head's spinning a little bit. But one of the commentators perhaps offers a little bit of clarity. It was common that animals were sacrificed to these pagan gods, right? And it became a real issue. It even became an issue in the first century AD when the Apostle Paul even wrote instructions regarding this particular matter. The Israelites, they do not want to assume or fall into the trap of practices that these pagan peoples undertook. One of them was that when animals were slaughtered, that they were offered up to these pagan gods, and they wanted to make sure that they weren't falling into that same kind of trap, right? But the Lord is telling them, like, you know what? It's a colloquial phrase. Within any of your gates, that means where you live. Okay? You don't have to only eat meat that was sacrificed at the specific places that the Lord tells you. No, you can carry about your regular business and your regular manner of procuring food for your family. Okay, you can slaughter animals at your home. You don't have to bring them to this temple or anything like that when they're for regular consumption. Now, there are sacrifices, there are offerings that you will have to bring to the temple or to the designated area. Those are different purposes, but food or animals that are slaughtered solely for the purposes of food, you don't have to do anything other than follow the previously outlined what we would call kosher laws as to how they're slaughtered and what type of animal they are. Okay? Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the game animals are allowed to be eaten.
Yeah.
They don't have to be used as an offering to the Lord.
Right.
But anything that's going to be used as an offering to the Lord has to be done according to the stipulations the Lord is giving them, mostly because also he's again, God and his people are set apart from the other gods, from the other peoples, the peoples that he is going to wipe out for them or help them wipe out. I mean, they had detestable practices for worship, and so he doesn't want the Israelites to compromise on how he is required to be worshipped, because he doesn't want any affiliation in their mind, or their heart. Like, well, this was okay for Baal, and this is okay for Molech, so we'll just throw Yahweh in there and worship him too. Like the God's like, no. A, those are not even real gods. B, he is the one true living God, and all those other fake gods were basically, tools of the enemy, so, and very detestable. So God doesn't want, them to compromise their worship of him.
Rich is tipping his hand, showing that he watches a lot of TV, because he's quoting a commercial regarding kosher hot dogs.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's funny. But
that's funny.
That did come to mind when I was reading that too, Rich.
Yeah, that's funny.
So there's a couple of points of clarification that are necessary here. Some commentators say that when it talks about, when it talks about the clean and the unclean alike, some commentators say that it's not referring to, and it can be interpreted this way, and it does actually, it's inclusive of both of these interpretations, that not only is he talking about clean and unclean animals, that was kind of a given, that was kind of an understood. This does not mean that they were suddenly okay to eat pork once they crossed into the promised land. No, that was a forbidden food, and shellfish, certain shellfish and things of that nature would still remain um, uh, forbidden or non-kosher foods, and the Jews were not to eat them. But it's also referring to uh, are these acceptable for certain animals were acceptable for sacrifice, i.e., sheep and goats and doves,
Right.
things of those nature, and they could be eaten. Okay, other animals could be eaten, but they were not acceptable for sacrifice when you did in fact make a sacrifice. Okay, and then other commentators say that it's also speaking about individual people as being, because we know from our previous studies in Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers that there were certain things that would render a person unclean to the point where they could not go to the temple without engaging in some purification type of rituals or things of that nature. Um, One that pops to mind right away is burying somebody or touching a dead body, women in their menstrual cycle. Um, those are a couple of the examples that just pop into my head right now. Is that you could not go to the temple and make a sacrifice if you were in that condition, like say you just buried your parents or something of that nature. You had to go through a purification ceremony. Okay, so it's referring to both clean and unclean animals, acceptable for sacrifice and not acceptable for sacrifice but edible. Okay, and people that were ceremonially clean and unclean. So some commentators include both, and so this rule that God is giving does in fact apply to both conditions. Verse 16.
Only you shall not eat the blood. You are to pour it out on the ground like water.
And this is a restriction that never went out of vogue. Okay, it was first laid down in Genesis in chapter 9, um, um, after the fall, and when humanity was given the okay to actually eat meat. Prior to that, the evidence indicates that pretty much everything was vegetarian. But once the fall occurred, that kind of all got shuffled around, and humanity was even then allowed to eat meat. But God made it very clear, way back in Genesis 9, that you are allowed to eat meat, but you cannot eat the blood, because it says, well, let me just read the verse. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Okay, and later on, pagans and basically people groups that worshipped false gods and even demons, they would drink blood. They would actually drink blood
Right.
and as a symbol of their quote unquote devotion to these pagan gods and demons, uh, almost as an act of defiance to what Yahweh originally said. And so even though God is saying, when you enter into the promised land, you may eat meat. You don't have to sacrifice it at the temple in order to feed your family. But the one restriction still stays in place: you shall not eat its blood or drink its blood. Okay, and again, we talked about this at length when this first came up. But even today, modern science, we know that blood is such an essential uh, uh, it, characteristic of life. Rich says, like a vampire. Right, and that's part of the reason that vampires became so horrific, and they took on these. I know, like now, there's all these stupid movies that glorify them and you know and make them heroes, so to speak, and stuff like that. But the original vampire stories, part of the reason that they were so horrific was because they ingested blood. They had to, okay, in direct violation of God's command, and and uh, uh, and that's basically, honestly, what the devil does. That's what he does. He takes the good things that God uh, tells us for our own benefit, and he twists them, and he tries to make them seem like really cool and desirable, and uh, you know, God said marriage is between a man and a woman, and sex in the context of that relationship is the only acceptable thing. Satan twists it around. It's like, no, you know, if it feels good, do it. Same thing with blood, you know. It's like, oh, you know, vampires are so cool, they drink blood. And there are indeed people emulating this whole idea of vampirism, and they will drink blood, you know, trying to be cool and trying to show how you know, spiritual they are. And it's just dumb.
Yep.
It's just dumb. So, but yeah, and it's in violation of God's word. That's what makes it dumb. Not there's a variety of reasons why it's a bad idea, but mostly it's a really bad idea because it's in direct violation of God's fairly explicit command. You shall not eat the blood. You shall not drink blood.
Right.
You know? So anyway, verse 17.
You are not allowed to eat within your gates the tithe of your grain, new wine or oil, or the firstborn of your herd or flock, or any of your vowed offerings which you vow, or your voluntary offerings, or the contribution of your hand. But you shall eat them before the Lord your God in the place which the Lord your God will choose. You and your son and daughter, and your male and female slaves, and the Levite who is within your gates, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God in all your undertakings.
There's a lot to unpack here, and so hopefully we're gonna spend a little bit of time. Rich says, "What about biting your lip?" Okay, that was unintentional, Rich. That was unintentional. So we're talking about intentional ingesting of blood. So Rich asked the question, "What happens if you bite your lip and you taste blood?" Your own blood. Yeah, yeah. So that goes perfectly, though. That segues perfectly with intent and purpose. Okay, the previous verses just said it's okay to eat meat. You don't have to eat things that are only slaughtered in the temple. You can slaughter them in your own villages and your own households and so on and so forth. Okay. However, if what you're going to eat is intended to be set apart as an offering, okay, a vow, an offering, a contribution to the temple upkeep, like
Right.
you're required to do, that is a different story.
Right.
That's a different story. You're not allowed to just eat those things at home or in your village. Okay, those are things that you've intended. You've made a conscious effort to say, "I'm going to dedicate this to the Lord." Oh. No.
Right.
No. That you need to bring to the temple and eat there in a prescribed manner. Okay, kind of like you can, here in the 21st century America, you can go down to the supermarket and you can buy a cake. You can buy a cake, you can take it home, and you can eat it. But if it's a wedding cake, oh darn, the lights went out.
Hello.
Again. All right, we're still here. Okay, we're still here. Lights went out. Don't worry. The timer.
Did they just come back on?
No,
if
they're
you...
supposed to.
Huh?
They're supposed to, but they didn't.
Oh.
So I think we explained this last time. But if you're just kind of like, what's going on? Why are we glowing like we're zombies here.
We need more people to tithe so that we can pay the electric bill a little bit
No,
longer.
that's not what's happening.
No, that's not it. Just kidding.
There's a new law that buildings like ours, like church buildings, have to install sensors that
Control the lights.
control the lights and will turn the lights off automatically.
That's so weird because we're sitting. I mean,
That will
there's
turn
a
the lights
sensor
off
right in
on-
front of us. That's why I'm saying, like, well, he's moved it all around. Pastor Paul has.
We're trying to find that sweet spot where our motions and our gesticulations will turn the light, keep the lights going. But apparently, it didn't send. We're lovely by night. Well, thank you, Miss Polly. So, but short answer is the sensors did not detect our body motion, so it turned out all the lights and plunged us into darkness. But we were able to control the lights and turn them back on, so we're good.
That's
We're good.
so
No,
weird,
we
though.
didn't forget to pay the bill.
We're lovely by night, Polly says. So, thank you, Polly. Marie had a question about this part of the passage because it says
yeah.
male and female slaves. Where did they get male and female slaves?
Right.
So remember, slave in Scripture isn't really the same thing as slave that we know the history of here in the United States and bringing people from Africa. People, and when the Israelites left Egypt, there's Egyptian people that chose to come with them. So, and those slaves, or sometimes the Bible will say slaves, or the Bible will say a foreigner among you, which is also sometimes a slave. So sometimes it's a person that has chosen to become part of the Israelite nation, and that since they're not technically part of one of the tribes, they live in the society and they work for other people. Sorry. So they work for other people, therefore they're slaves, but it doesn't mean they don't get paid or they don't get compensated. They're not really owned. It's sort of like, it's more like they're
servants.
They're servants. They're like
servants,
paid servants.
Or they could be indentured servants. In previous studies, we talked about if people were in debt and they could not pay off their debt, they could essentially sell themselves as servants, workers in the household to pay off their accumulated debt. So a better translation of that word slaves would be servants, and both men and women could or would be enter into these. They were contracts.
Right.
They were contracts, but they were basically indentured servants or workers. What, like prostitution? No, not like prostitution.
No, they're just like they would help work on the farm, work, not sex workers.
Yeah.
They're just regular, like people that, like you have a hired hand, somebody who comes to your farm every day and works for you.
In fact, that's a
but
good...
they're not a slave like they're brought over from Africa and they're owned and they have no rights and no
they actually
voice.
Many safeguards instituted in Scripture. Actually, God decreed that individuals that were in servanthood like that, they were to be well cared for and they were to be protected and they were not to be exploited, and they were not to be used and abused or sexually taken advantage of, and there were many restrictions and punishments for somebody who exploited an indentured servant or something of that nature. So it's unfortunate that the translators chose the word slaves in this particular translation. Servants or indentured servants would have been a better choice, but nothing to do with prostitution.
In the NLT, so you're using NASB translation. In the NLT, it uses the term servant.
Yeah.
So,
but that's an excellent question, Marie.
Your servants and the Levites who live in the town. So it uses the term servant. Now, way back in Leviticus is where it talks about the Leviticus chapter 25 in verse 9 is where it talks about a year of Jubilee, which was a Sabbath year. and it's a sabbatical year, sorry, after 7 cycles of 7. So every 49 years,
Right.
the Israelites were supposed to, unfortunately, there's no evidence that they ever actually
Did
followed this commandment, but God commanded them to every 50th year have this time of celebration where they actually would not work their land at all,
Right.
and all people who were in bondage, all prisoners and captives were set free, all slaves were released, all debts were forgiven, and all property was returned to its original owners.
Right.
If property had been bought and sold or something, as or traded. So very interesting. That that's what it's.
Right.
There's a time God provided for, like Dan was saying, for slaves to have a time to be freed.
Right.
If they were a servant from indebtedness,
Right.
God had provided like safeguards. So I just thought I'd bring that up. But that was in Leviticus 25 where we learned about that, and it's a different type of slavery than what we know of America's history. It's a different type of slavery. It's more like a job, a servant, role, and it was more because it was more voluntary. Like they became part of the family
Right.
because they worked for sometimes, and they even would get their ear pierced
Right.
because they would belong to that family.
Right. So no, not an Amistad situation, Rich. So referring to the slave ship where there was a rebellion.
No. Right.
Yeah. Not
different
like that at
type.
all.
So
Yeah.
just say the word servant there instead of
Yeah.
slave, and it makes a little more sense.
So to reiterate,
Less controversial.
so the Lord has just told the people you are allowed to prepare, slaughter, and prepare meat intended for consumption within your village or within your homestead. Okay, if whatever it is, be it meat, grain, wine, oil, any of the things that were spoken of previously, if those items are intended to be a sacrifice, an offering to the Lord, okay, then those items were to be eaten in a prescribed manner at the temple or the site where the Lord designates, which we'll see later on.
Right.
And I know we kind of got off a little side note there, which was extremely important to clarify. But notice how inclusive this is.
Right.
Okay. I know inclusiveness is sort of an iffy word in our modern culture, but this is radical in a good way. This is radical because God is saying, not only, does this mandate include you, but it also includes your children, your servants,
right.
the Levite. So it crosses societal boundaries. It crosses socioeconomic classes, things of that nature. God's house is available to all.
Right. Carolyn had a comment. Yeah, but it's right. Yeah, God doesn't say just the Israelites and everyone else must go sit on a bench somewhere and not be a part of the eating, the festivities, and the sacrifice, the offering. Carolyn said indentured servants from Europe and Africa, right, they worked off debt for transport. So
right.
That is similar to like this potentially. Yeah. Like these people would, they decided they wanted to go, remember, they wanted to leave Egypt with the Israelites, or they were already maybe working alongside the Israelites, right. Because they were, forced to work there by the Egyptians. And then when God, freed the Israelites from true slavery in Egypt, where they were being worked like slaves, then some people decided to come with them. And then those people they decided, oh, I'm going to serve this family, that I've been working right. alongside. And now I want to be part of God's people. But, so God is including them, right. in his worship, his prescription for worship. So,
right, absolutely.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. It's important that we define these terms, because slave has such a negative connotation, and it is rightfully so.
Yeah, right,
it's
right.
It's
But we've got to
slave.
remember there was different different definitions of that word.
Servants and,
Yeah.
and so on.
Right.
Yeah, there are some very distinct differences between how individuals
how they assume that role, basically.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So you'll eat them. You eat, verse 18. You eat the offerings, these voluntary offerings, or these offerings intended to be given to the Lord as part of fulfilling what He had said that they, as a society, ought to do, and they were to be eaten in a prescribed manner. They were all inclusive. And then that last sentence is kind of the kicker.
Right.
Rejoice.
Right.
Before the Lord your God in all your undertakings. The pagan peoples, they were making these sacrifices. They were literally murdering their own children in hopes of appeasing these detestable false gods that they somehow chose to worship. Right. God is saying, rejoice. Come into the presence of the Lord and rejoice. And when you sit down with somebody that you truly love or you truly like, and you have dinner together, it's rejoicing. You laugh. You exchange ideas. You have a great meal, right? Yeah. You don't sit there in fear and trepidation, like, oh,
Right.
That's not rejoicing.
Right.
Okay. God is saying, you come to my house, but you come as a welcome guest, and we rejoice. We have this wonderful back and forth relationship.
And we eat this meal together in the presence of the Lord.
Right.
So I've said this before back in Leviticus when we were first learning about these sacrifices and God's prescription for them, that church potlucks are biblical because God says, come and eat, and everybody come, and everybody eats together. So it's the prescription. The very first church potlucks were definitely ordained by God. He set it up himself. So that's why all the churches are like, let's have a carry-in meal. It's so appropriate. And the NLT uses the word, instead of rejoice, it uses the word celebrate. Celebrating in the presence of the Lord your God in all you do. So it's a huge celebration. And that's, like Dan said, that's very different from many of the sacrifices of the other fake false gods, because if you can imagine that the mother wasn't celebrating when her firstborn child is being basically thrown into a fire or slaughtered, dismembered, or what have you. So detestable things being done, so that wasn't an occasion of joy and celebration. But God is saying, A, never sacrifice a child or any human being to me, and B, it's a celebration. And He wants it to come from your heart,
and that's our heart. That's the difference between the Lord, worshiping the Lord, and everything else. Satan hates humanity.
Right.
So the more fear and the more doubt and the more works that he can impose upon humanity and get them to believe it, believing that giving your own child over to some stupid
piece of wood,
metal
really, but
or wood is going, and the difference is God is motivated by love.
Right.
He's motivated by love. Come to my house, dine with me.
Right.
Rejoice with me.
Right.
Right. Marie asks, do you think these servants believed in God?
Well,
if they were indentured servants and if they were Jewish, definitely they were aware of God.
Even if they were Egyptian, I'm thinking, I don't really know if it's recorded to answer your question exactly, but if we look at the context of everything, and if these people, there are people who went with the Israelites, when they left Egypt, or this is second generation, because we're looking at this, Moses is talking to the second generation, but it seems to me that they would, be followers, not just believe in God, but they would be, because they would be circumcised, they would be prescribing to all of the practices, because they saw the miracles, they experienced the manna for 40 years, and they've seen God working, and so I believe it makes the most sense to me that they do believe in God and that they're people who are following. That's why God's including them in the worship. Otherwise, he would be saying, nope, you must wipe them out before we enter the promised land.
Right.
Because that'd be a weak link of compromise, and they would just be coming along with the Israelites.
Right.
I mean, God is literally having the Israelites, we're just preaching on Joshua right now, so too. And he's saying it here in Deuteronomy, but in Joshua it's happening. They are wiping out every being of these
Right.
towns and villages and cities that God is saying, take Jericho, take Ai, take this city, take that city. They're being instructed to wipe out everyone.
But to answer Marie's question, but in Joshua, which is down
next
the road
chapter.
here, next book.
Yeah, next book.
Yeah, Rahab,
right,
who was a prostitute in the city of Jericho,
right,
she believed,
right,
and God spared her life, and then she became enfolded into the Jewish nation, and ultimately she would be an ancestor of Jesus.
Right.
So
To answer your question, and I don't know that it's really spelled out, but in my opinion, they have to be believers of God, or
Right.
they would be a weak link in
Right.
what God's doing at this point, preparing his people to take the promised land and wipe out everyone who doesn't believe in him.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
So it only makes logical sense that they are believers.
And again, many of them.
But that's a really good question.
Many of them had become indentured because of poverty or poor business decisions or whatever, right? And so they were already Jewish, and they were servants, as you said. So it was a very different perspective from kidnapped slaves who were forcibly taken away from their homelands and subjected to unspeakable horrors and forced to engage in the things that they were engaged in or made to engage in. So hopefully that answers your question. Moving on, verse 19.
Be careful that you do not abandon the Levite as long as you live in your land.
As we'll see, the next several verses are going to go back to the discussion on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to eat, and what about
Hagar?
Good gravy. What about Hagar? So not quite following you, just in the sense that she was a servant. You're talking about Hagar, like in Abraham.
Yeah, Abraham. Sarah had Abraham.
Right. Well, that relationship,
right.
She was Sarah's maiden. Yeah. Or helper or assistant.
That's another example of a servant. That's a good example of a servant who sort of believed in God. I mean, it's a different point in time, because as Abraham, is that what you're talking about, Hagar, at the time of Abraham? Yes, okay. So I mean, that was way before the Exodus and all, but yeah, that's another example of a servant who was from a different, like, ethnic, religious background, but was kind of incorporated into Abraham's family, Abraham and Sarah, right? And then she gave birth to Ishmael.
Initially, that was a good relationship, but
right.
jealousy and strife tainted it, and so that relationship went south very rapidly. And it's an example of what you're not supposed to do.
Right. Okay? Don't get ahead of God.
That was not handled well at all. Right. So that's a good example of what happens when things go south. That was not the original intent, and yeah, it went that way. So verse 19 is interesting because it does not seem to fit into the narrative. We're talking about food and offerings and things of that nature, and then kind of inserted in there is like, do not abandon the Levite as long as you live in the land.
Right.
Okay. And one commentator put it this way: he said, placing instructions about the Levites between two almost identical sections on the eating of meat was perhaps intentional to highlight the need to focus on their well-being and not just on their performance as religious figures in the tabernacle.
Yeah, NLT says, never neglect the Levite. I kind of like that.
Neglect,
yeah. Just says, be careful um, and be very careful never to neglect the Levite as long as you live in your land. So
Right.
because the Levite's not going to be given the same amount of property, they're not going to, we've talked about this before.
Right.
Their duties are taking care of the sacrifices
Right.
and the offerings and the tabernacle, and so that consumes their day really, and so
Right.
they're not going to have time to bring their own harvest, grain in and all that, and raise their own cattle and all that stuff. They will have a few of their own animals, so. But
Yeah.
it does mention, I thought that too, Marie, in verse
Yeah,
18,
yeah, it does.
mentions the Levite there, so to me it doesn't seem out of context.
Right.
It just is an emphasis after including them in the worship
Right.
offerings. It says, be careful not to neglect them
right.
in any way, and that's just sort of an emphasis. So
And
to
it's
me
sort
it
of
fits.
it's sort of an exclamation point
Yeah.
on these offerings that you are to bring to the temple. They
Right.
have a function
Right.
for you, but also for the welfare of the Levites.
Right. There
So-
would be a portion, remember, given
Yeah.
to the priests and the Levites for their families of all these different offerings. There's a portion. That's a way of provision for them.
Right,
Right.
right. So these it's reiterating how important these offerings are.
Right.
They're not just for your benefit, but they
Right.
also benefit the Levites, and that in turn benefits the entire nation,
Right.
since the Levites were charged with the upkeep and the functioning of the temple, and it would be easy to kind of overlook them. Okay, that old adage, we've all heard it. If you want to know somebody's character that you're considering hiring for a job, go to dinner or go to lunch with them and see how they treat the wait staff.
Yeah.
Kind of the same idea.
Right.
Okay, kind of the same idea. Verse 20.
When the Lord your God extends your border as he has promised you, and you say, I will eat meat, because you desire to eat meat, then you may eat meat, whatever you desire.
Right.
So that seems a little like, okay, what are they saying
Yeah,
here?
that's a little bit
Right.
odd phrasing, but remember, God promised. I don't remember the exact boundaries, but He promised a pretty vast holding of land, and it would not be practical for the Hebrews to travel if they were living in the sort of the boundary lands or the outer lands. It would not be practical for them to always have to come to the main temple to procure meat that was acceptable to the Lord. So the Lord is saying, it's like, I'm going to stretch your borders out. Your borders are going to
Right.
encompass from here to here to there, and I'm giving you permission to eat what you need to eat within those boundaries, right?
Right. Yeah, and the NLT says, I like what it says, when the Lord your God expands your territory as he has promised, and you have the urge to eat meat, you may freely eat meat whenever you want. That's what it says.
Right,
So-
right. But there's always that underlying caveat, which was brought out by several of the commentators. Meat could be eaten in the promised land,
Right.
okay, but it had to be the right kind, okay, and
Right.
instructions for that are given in earlier chapters. It had to be killed at the right place, and it had to be killed in the right way.
Right.
Okay, Rich earlier had said kosher, and kosher laws demanded that have become known as kosher laws, but godly laws demanded that the animal be killed humanely and quickly,
Right.
and that the blood be drained from the body.
Right.
Okay, again, there's the blood thing. Okay, and nice porterhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
It's making me hungry.
So yeah. So God is saying, so yeah, you can obviously you can have food where you dwell. Okay, because He's going to give them a big territory. Think like something, a territory not quite as big as the state of California, but think on those terms.
Right.
Imagine if you had to travel to Sacramento every time you wanted to have meat on your menu.
Right.
Highly impractical.
Right. So, I mean, as long as it's not an animal that's intended for offering for the Lord, like a firstborn or
Right.
one of those other things we listed earlier, they could slaughter an animal
Right.
appropriately and enjoy the meat with their family. They
Right.
don't have to take every animal every time they want to have meat to the central place of worship and offering that God is going to delineate.
Uber Eats. That's funny, Rich. That's funny. But notice an important point about verse 20. It starts with the word when.
Yep.
When. So the Lord is saying, I'm going to expand your borders. I'm going to give you
it's
the
not
promise.
If, it's when the Lord expands your territory. That's right. So, very important, that for us too, God is ready to expand all of our territory, how are we going about allowing him to do that,
Right.
So,
verse 21.
If the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, then you may slaughter animals from your herd and flock, which the Lord has given you, as I have commanded you, and you may eat within your gates whatever you desire. That's what we just talked about.
Reiterating what we just talked about.
Right.
So,
Yep. God chooses for his name to be honored, that place, if that's a long way from your home. If so, you may butcher any of the cattle, sheep, or goats the Lord has given you, and you may freely eat the meat in your hometown, as I have commanded you. Again, like Dan said, they had to still be killed in the humane way that God prescribed.
Absolutely.
And the blood drained, things like that still had to be adhered to, but they didn't have to make it a worship service every time they wanted to eat.
And we see this even in the life of Jesus. Scripture records that his family periodically traveled from Galilee down to Jerusalem to make the prescribed offerings. Now, obviously, when they weren't making that sojourn, they were slaughtering and eating animals in Galilee. Right. So we see the practical aspect of that coming out.
Right.
Verse 22.
Just as a gazelle or a deer is eaten, so you may eat it. The unclean and the clean alike may eat it. Only be sure not to eat the blood, for the blood is the life, and you shall not eat the life with the flesh. You shall not eat it, you shall pour it out on the ground like water.
Okay. And again, so God is saying there are animals that you can eat. Okay. They can be clean and unclean, i.e. acceptable for sacrifice or offering at the temple, and not acceptable for offering at the temple. You can eat those animals as long as they fall within the greater confines of what God has already said. Okay, but he really reiterates that phrase again. Only be sure not to eat the blood, for the blood is the life, and you shall not eat the life with the flesh. Okay, he reiterates that again. It is to be drained away and be allowed to go back onto the ground. Okay, so
7:59.
Oh, it's my goodness, time has flown by. So we are going to end here. We're going to end tonight here. Thank you, one and all, for the amazing comments
Good
and
comments and questions.
Loved it. Thank you so much for joining us. I know everybody's going to now, y'all going to want to go
get a steak.
To your favorite burger place, okay? Go for it, okay? Here in Southern California, it's In-N-Out, okay? Somewhere else, it might be another place, but know that you're not doing anything wrong in the eyes of the Lord. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Have a great weekend,
you folks. Have a great week. We will see you next Thursday.
Next Thursday,
same place,
believe.
Same time.
All right.
Okay. So take care, everybody.
Have a wonderful evening and
night.
Weekend, and just keep Jesus first, and you'll never be disappointed.
And if you're local and you have nothing to do or nothing going on Sunday afternoon, please join us.
Yep.
Here at 14-6 Church.
Yes.
The address is up there in the comments.
We'd love to have you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.